The lead hook is one of the most important punches you're going to have to learn. It's the right combination of built-in knockout power and extreme technical finesse. It is also the punch most people are doing wrong. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I like to teach the lead hook, as well as a few variations that might make it better for you. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications turned on. That way you never miss a new video. Let's talk about why I think the lead hook is one of the most important punches. First of all, like I said, it's got built-in knockout power. Your jab is really more of a measuring tool. This is not the punch that you're going to use to put some away. And while you can do that with the straight right, that's again not necessarily the goal, or at least not necessarily the first goal with the cross. But with the hook, since you're putting it across your opponent's face, hitting them in either the jaw or around the ear, it's meant to rattle the brain inside the head. Meaning, this is the first punch you're going to learn that is made to knock an opponent out. Secondly, while the hook follows a natural movement, meaning the natural way to throw a punch being to swing your arm from side to side, it is not the most natural execution. Again, an untrained person will swing their arms kind of wildly to generate power, whereas we try to throw punches straight down the line. So the lead hook combines that untrained primal instinct to swing our arms with more technical, scientific force development. And because of the weird angle the hook takes, people who don't know how to defend against it don't know how to defend against it. Even if you only master the straight left, the straight right, and the hook, you're already leagues above an untrained fighter who has no idea how to deal with any of them. All that out of the way, let's talk about how to actually throw the lead hook. I like to break the body up into three parts: the arm, the shoulder, and by extension, the back, and the lower body. We're gonna do all these things independently and then put them together for what we'll call the lead hook. I like to turn my arm into a windshield wiper. If I can get this motion down, I can figure out how to throw the hook. So what I'm gonna do is, from my stance, take my arm and bend it outside of my guard and then flick it over like a windshield wiper. Again, I'm here and down, here and down. What I wanna avoid doing is going too far with the elbow up and the hand down, because obviously this is too far for a hook. I also don't wanna go too far to the side, because now I'm risking hurting my elbow as well as my shoulder. It's a slight pop to the left and then a return to the right. While I'm doing that, and I know we're talking about the upper body, I also want to get my lower body involved. So as I lean my arm to the left, so too goes my hips. Then from here, boom. That's all the motion I need. Now, let's talk about the shoulder and the back. From here, the only thing this part of my body is going to do is push to the other side. I'm going to shrug my shoulder to the other side of my body. So as my arm does the windshield wiper, my shoulder is going to push across. I'm not isolating just the shoulder to move across. It's also happening through my lats. So I'm reaching all the way up my trunk into my shoulder to make that motion happen. Now, there's a bit of debate on what you want to do with your lower body. Some people say you don't have to rotate through the feet. I, and people who are correct, like to say you do have to rotate your feet, but ultimately, it doesn't matter. Again, it's what works for you. This is a way, not the way. But since we're gonna do it the right way, here's how I like to do it. As I turn my hip to the left to load up my hook, I'm now gonna rotate over my lead foot, pushing my weight back towards my rear. Again, I'm here. The whole thing is meant to bring my hip from the left and back to my right. One more time, I'm here. My weight is being pushed from my front to my back. I'm not just doing this for the sake of rotating my feet. I need my weight to transfer. So you'll notice I normally have one heel up in the air. With this right heel up in the air, that means my weight is on my lead foot. As soon as I transfer back over, now the lead heel is in the air and I'm heavy on the right foot. This is where the power of the hook comes from. The transfer of weight being delivered through your opponent. When I say push your weight back, I don't mean pushing all of your body weight behind your rear leg. Because yes, this still looks like a good hook, but now I'm off balance. As soon as my head goes past my leg, my balance is outside of my body, meaning I'm much easier to knock over and there's power taken away from my punch. I want to keep my weight between my legs as much as I can at all times. So when I'm throwing my punch, yes, my weight shifts backwards, but it doesn't shift back. It's only a small movement. My weight is still staying between my feet, and that's true of all of my punches. Whether we're talking about the straight right, or the hook, or the jab, or the backflip punch, which I'm not gonna do right now, your weight needs to stay in between your feet at all times. This should go without saying, but because there's some assholes out there who purposely misunderstand what I'm trying to do, when you throw your punch, make sure your chin is tucked down and your shoulders are high. So my punch is happening here with my head hiding in between my shoulders, not here with my head popping up. Reason I'm doing that now is so that I can talk to the camera, but obviously when you're practicing, tuck that chin in. Use your shoulders to protect yourself. You are simultaneously fighting with a sword with your hand and hiding behind a shield. Again, I'm here. What I'm not doing is taking this lead arm and jabbing across my body. This is the instinct that pisses me off. A lot of people want to create power with this punch by turning it from a hook into a diagonal jab, and that's not the way the punch is done. More or less, I'm gonna keep my elbow locked out, meaning my arm is gonna stay in this relatively 90-degree angle, from the beginning of the punch to the end of the punch. If my opponent's slightly farther away, I'll let that angle be a little bit longer, but I'm never going to punch across like this, unless that's what I decide to do, but that's a different argument. Again, the power of the punch doesn't come from the elbow. It's not an extending punch. I mean, it is, but it's extending through my hips and through my back. My arm is more or less locked out. I should be able to throw a good hook by keeping my arm like this and rotating through the hips and back. The power of the punch never comes from your arms. It comes from your legs. The only thing your arm is doing is delivering the punch. The rest of my body is throwing the punch. Now it's time to talk about palm in, palm down, or palm out. There is a reason and an excuse to do all of these. The excuse is you have no idea why you're doing them. But the reason is because we're trying to line up these two knuckles with the muscle and bone in our forearm. If these things are aligned, then our hook is technically sound. If they're not aligned, we now risk breaking our wrist, breaking our knuckle, or losing a lot of power in the punch. So this is shorthand. This is not always the case, but in general, if you're punching someone real close, you want to punch with the palm in. If they're slightly more in a middle range, you'll punch with the palm down. And what I have found is I line up the muscles in my hand much better in a long range with the palm turned out like this. This is something I took from my Kung Fu training, and while I do think 99% of Kung Fu is bullshit, in this case, I find that it's very helpful. So, as I go to throw my long range hook, I'm gonna add a little flick of the wrist. Again, I'm here, boom. Notice, however, that everything else is staying the same, no matter if I'm throwing the tight in hook or the long range hook. Here's an important question. How important is it to not load up your punch before you throw it? Now, the reason people do this is because they think this will help you create power for the punch. And it does, but really it doesn't do it any more than loading up your hips does. Because what pulling your arm back does is help you bring that hip in. Again, punching comes from the legs, not from the arm. So I can get the same amount of benefit from doing this as I can by just loading my hip. But that doesn't mean there's no benefit to loading up the arm. Because obviously it's a natural instinct, because our body knows if we want to generate force, we gotta swing that hand over. So it really isn't the worst thing in the world if you happen to pull that arm back. However, you are taking a risk, because if my opponent is moving, as an opponent will, I run the risk of losing the timing on that punch while I'm wasting time pulling my arm away. And same token, if I pull this punch back too far and I'm not aware of the timing, there comes my opponent to hit me when he realizes I'm telegraphing my punch. However, there is kind of a golden zone for loading up the punch. I can do it too much and run the risk of getting hit, or I can not do it enough and take away some of the power from the punch. But if I do it just the right Goldilocks amount, I can combine that load up from the arm with my hips to deliver a maximum punch. So find the middle ground. This is where the science wants us to be. This is where your body wants to be. Boom! That is where you want your punch to be. Also, a quick tip. When you land the hook, what do you want to do? Do you want to strike and return back where you came from? Do you want to glance off the bag? Or do you want to shove this thing across the planet? The answer is, stop it. You want to do all three. Because sometimes you need to land your hook and get right back to moving away. Sometimes you're hitting your opponent on the chin and you're glancing right past him. Other times you want to shove him over so you can follow up with another powerful strike. So again, don't get caught up on doing any one thing any one way. There's no one right way to do anything every time. There's just different ways to do them. Are you seeing a theme today? One quick variation of the hook that I like, especially if I'm wearing MMA gloves or barehanded, is to do what I call the slap hook. Meaning, rather than hitting with my knuckles, which when I'm barehanded can be very dangerous, I use the open palm of my hand to smack my opponent. Now, I'm not doing the boss root open palm smack. I'm not driving my hand into my opponent. I'm quite literally just slapping him. I'm adding a little more from the shoulder and back to help smack my opponent across the face. I'm trying to land with the bottom palm of my hand, but if I happen to get the finger, that can also be pretty devastating. But the mechanics of the punch are the exact same with the closed fist style or the open palm style. And even if I do have boxing gloves on, this is a good way to move my opponent to the side so I can follow up with a more powerful strike. So if you're bare knuckle, try incorporating the open palm slap, or if you're in gloves, try doing more of the slap hook. Either way works, it's just more tools in your arsenal. So there was my way to throw the lead hook. Now, remember, I say my way, not the way. There's 1,000 different ways you can throw the lead hook, and really the only one that matters is how it works for you. So, whether you're watching my channel, someone else's channel, or training in person at your gym, just remember you're learning someone else's interpretation. There is no one way to do anything. There's only the way that works for you. And I hope that my tutorial was able to help you figure out what that is. If it didn't, well, who cares? You've already watched this far anyway. But that being said, if you like this video, if you found me entertaining, or you feel like you learned something, be sure to subscribe, tap the notification bell, like, share, and leave a comment. If you want to show support to me, and therefore the channel, head on over to combatsd.square.site, where you can pick up the official Combat Self-Defense t-shirt, coffee mug, or anything else we have on the site. This has been Rob from Combat Self-Defense. I want to thank you guys for all the hard work. Thank you for the hard work yet to be done, and I'll see you next time.